Welcome to the Liberace Mansion.
Welcome to Under the Vegas Sun, looking at the people, the events, and the news surrounding Las Vegas and the entire Vegas Valley. Hello, I'm Steve Schorr. We are live from the Liberace Mansion. Probably one of the toughest decisions that voters make, besides that of voting for president, is who will run the state in which they live. In Nevada, the governor's race is probably one of the more heated races that takes place other than the presidential race. This year, it seems as though it's even more heated. Our very special guest on the program today is one of the men running for governor in Nevada. What are his feelings? What are his opinions? What does he truly believe about this state? In a moment, you'll meet that candidate, Steve Sisolak. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Becoming the governor of any state takes a lot. Being that governor takes even more. In today's world, governors, states face a lot more than they did 5, even 10 years ago. What does it take to be that governor? Our special guest on the program today is a man here in Nevada who wants to be the next governor. Very good friend, Steve Sisolak. Welcome to our program.
Terrific, Steve. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Let's go first to you. Before we get to governor, you had been a member of the Board of Regents in Nevada for 10 years. In 2008, you decided to be county commissioner, ran for county commission. You're now the chairman of the county commission. When you look at how the state has changed since 2008, in 2008, this state was in severe problems. Southern Nevada was in severe problems. What do you think is the one thing that drove it forward?
I think that the economy turning was the biggest thing for us. Obviously, we were facing the worst recession that we've had, certainly in my lifetime that I can remember. So many homes were underwater and people were in foreclosure positions and they didn't have jobs, which made it even worse. And the fact that we hung in there as a community, we hung very strong, I think, and it slowly started to turn. And as people got back to work, they could afford to refinance their homes and to move on and support themselves and their family. But we were facing some pretty dark days back there in 2008, 2009, 10 area where it was didn't look very promising. But things have certainly changed, and a lot of good things happening in Clark County.
As a county commissioner for all those years here in Southern Nevada, you faced a lot of those challenges. Mm-hmm. A lot of the public turned to the county commission to fix what the problems were being faced. How did that occur, and what made Steve Sisolak believe that what he needed to do next was help the state?
Well, we faced some tough issues at the time. During a time when during a recession, when the unemployment's going up and our revenues are going down, the demand for social services are going way up, and it was difficult to fund that. One of the most difficult things we went through is having to lay off people at the county. It was not something that I took lightly. It's something that I had a lot of sleepless nights over. You know, you're impacting people's lives to an extent that you just don't want to do that when you have to lay someone off. And that was a very, very difficult time, but we were able to hold it together. We spent down our reserves, and we'd planned for some bad days, and it certainly came, the rainy days, if that's what you want to call them. And we spent down what we'd accumulated and got through it. It just started to turn as we were spending the last of what we'd accumulated and saved moving forward. And we'd realized how much people suffered, and I realized how much people suffered, and that kind of gave me the thought that we need to be more prepared next time than we were this time, certainly. I mean, we're still far too dependent on hospitality and gaming and that industry. We need to do more in terms of light, clean manufacturing. I think more exporting, more renewable energy type products that we can export out of here, and distribution, that sort of thing, so that when there is another recession, and there will be one, we both know that. I mean, it's cyclical.
It's cyclical.
Right. Whether it comes in a year, 5 years, or 20 years, there's going to be another one that will be more prepared and hopefully won't be impacted quite as badly.
You faced probably what I believed, and I've been around the state for a long time, you probably faced one of the nastiest primary races that I have seen in a long time. Mm-hmm. It became to a point personal, which shocked me, to be honest. Mm-hmm. You faced in that primary a county commissioner who sat literally seats away from you, and it did get nasty. How do you, as a candidate now, get past that in order to face what you face in the needs in the future?
Right. I've done what I can to try to, to talk to Chris, and we've talked a little bit, and to move forward. And I think we agree on one thing, that we can't have the principles that our opponent, my opponent, Adam Laxalt, has for what his policy changes would be, and to try to unite the people that support both of us and move forward. It was a very nasty, difficult campaign. It's unfortunate. We had different groups were supporting each side of ours. An awful lot of outside money came in on the race, which made it difficult for us. We spent a lot more than we wanted to spend.
Between you and Chris, you spent almost $8 million, or just over $8 million in the race. That's a lot of money.
That was just the in-state money.
Right.
And when you counted, she had outside money, another $4 million comes, so it was probably 12 when you had it all in there. And that's a lot of money to go for a primary. And now we've got just a short period of time left to recoup ourselves and move forward to the general. So hopefully we'll be able to put everybody together. But I firmly believe in what we stand for, what I want to bring to the state of Nevada, and I think the majority of citizens feel the same way I do.
The last time we had a Democratic governor was Bob Miller. Since that time, we've had 3 Republican governors. A lot of people see Nevada as a Republican state. How does Steve Sisolak, a Democrat, now change that to become the first Democratic governor in a long time?
Well, traditionally, we've got a lot of the local boards and commissions and councils, and the state legislature has been Democratic, but the constitutional offices, you're right, have been traditionally Republican for the last 20 years. And I don't quite know how that's gotten that way. It clearly is. It's been 20 years since we had Bob Miller, and that's something that we're very aware of. What we've done is we've really concentrated on our coordinated campaign moving this forward. We need to, there's more Democrats registered to vote in the state of Nevada than there are Republicans. If we turn out the Democrats, we will win. If we don't turn out the Democrats, we're in trouble. In some years, they just don't turn out. Democrats don't turn out. And this is an off year, presidential election, which we both know suppresses turnout when it's an off year, because people tend to vote for the president's office, and frankly, their city councils and county commission races mean more to them than the president does, because it's closer.
It has a greater impact on
them. It has much greater impact on them, and we just need to get the word out to all of the voters that support us that the election is November 6th, and we need to be there, and everybody needs to turn out.
You have definitive platforms that you want to deal with: education, healthcare, the economy, gun safety, a great number of items. But education is critically important to this state. Any poll that you look at, any survey that you look at, sees Nevada's education in a pretty disastrous situation on any of the categories. The highest we rank in any of the categories is 43rd. Some cases we're last or next to last. How do you, as the governor, see the importance of changing that paradigm, and how are you going to be able to do that in today's economy, when every single time the question of taxes are raised, people go, not me?
Right. And I appreciate asking the question, because I don't think we need to raise any taxes in order to accomplish what I want to. I'm a firm believer in our education system. We need to do more. It's a great equalizer. I mean, I feel that every young person, regardless of their bank balance or their zip code, is entitled to quality education. And I mean, not just our suburban schools, I mean our urban core schools as well. That's not the case now. And I think there's certain things have to change fundamentally. If you want to recruit and retain the best teachers, we have to pay more money. I mean, you can't start people at $39,000 and $40,000 a year and expect kids to go to college and accumulate this debt and this education and not be paid for it. It's a tough job going into classrooms. We've got teachers you're well aware of. When I went to school, the parents signed up for bringing the cupcakes or the vegetable tray. Now they're signing up to bring hand sanitizer, or paper towels, or reams of paper, because there's just not enough supplies. Teachers are buying supplies out of their own pocket. I mean, they're providing breakfast bars and granola bars to their students because sometimes they don't have anything else to eat before they come to school. So we need to make our classrooms smaller, our class sizes smaller, and pay our teachers more. Now, that being said, there are some funds I think that are available. The marijuana tax money was directed towards education. Had it not been directed towards that, I really don't believe it would have passed.
But was it truly directed towards education? I mean, any way that you look at it, the funding formula for education in Nevada, I believe, is broken. And how do you fix that? Because the way it looks now is that although those funds will go to education, the moment they go in, other funds come out and go back into the general fund.
Yeah, you can't supplant the money. That's supplanting, and you can't do that. What I would like to do is, you're right, the distributive school account DSA formula is broken. It's antiquated. It's over 50 years old. we didn't have some of this categorical funding then, any of this categorical funding then when they developed that formula. So I think we need to revamp the entire formula. And what I would propose doing is, I'm not a big favor of studies and panels or whatnot, but we're going to have 4 living governors, ex-governors. I would ask 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. I'd ask them to sit down and say, look, let's come up with a bipartisan, because everybody's in favor of improving our education system. Let's come up with a bipartisan solution to fix this and come up with a way to fund it. At the same time, we need to hold some of the rural counties, harmless. You can't take money away from them that they'd relied on, but what we're doing now doesn't work. You've got the Zoom and Victory schools and some of these schools where they apply for extra funds and grants, they get them, they improve from a 1-star to a 3-star, and they take the money back from them, which then they fail again. That doesn't work. So we need to replace that money, and the marijuana tax money should not be supplanted. Initiative Petition 1 money shouldn't be supplanted. I mean, that's what happened when they passed the room tax to fund educational efforts, and that was supplanted, and that needs a change. And then there's going to be some additional revenue with the advent of the sales tax on internet sales. And any new revenue, what I'd like to do is freeze it so you hold people harmless, and the new money coming in goes towards the biggest 2 districts, which are Washoe and Clark.
There was a time when one of the largest unions in the state for teachers went against you, the NSEA. Mm-hmm. Have you healed that? Has that come back together again?
I have. I've spent a lot of time talking to the NSEA, and we've got 2 teachers unions. You've got the CCEA, which covers basically Clark County Education Association, Nevada State Education Association, which the CCEA used to be a part of. They're no longer part of that. And they've had their differences on some issues. Hopefully everybody will get to the same page. I'm the candidate that's clearly stronger in education. I think they see that and realize that. We just have to find a way to get to the common area. You're right, that goes back to the campaign. It got a little nasty.
Yep, got a little nasty.
Yeah, a lot of money was spent by some of those groups that, is hard to take. It's hard for me to swallow. But now we need to all get on the same page because it's that important to us. The benefit of our students and our state is what's at stake.
I'm going to take a break for a couple of seconds. When we come back, I want to talk to you about some of the mud that was thrown and how you get healed from that mud. We'll talk about that in just a couple of seconds. Stay with us. We'll be right back. What does it take to be governor? Why would somebody want to be governor of a state? How much pressure and stress does that put on the individual and the family? A very special guest in the program once again, a gentleman who wants to be the next governor of this state, Steve Sisolak. Welcome back to our program.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate
I had mentioned earlier a lot of mud was thrown during this past primary election. A lot of mud was thrown toward you and against you. And I always felt guilty that when those things happen, the candidate, the individual, never had a chance to respond because it's just an ad that's out there. This time it was pretty nasty. So I'm going to give you a chance now to respond to those things. So I think for the public, it's very, very important. One of the things that came out and was alleged was that Steve Sisolak helped his friends get rich on the funding of the county. They were given sweetheart contracts, so on and so forth down the line. That was a pretty big issue that came with your name. You have a chance now to respond. What do you say?
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. It is categorically false. We award a lot of contracts at the county. A donation or a friendship has never impacted how I've awarded any contract ever with any. I've voted against a lot more friends than I voted in favor of. If it was a close relationship, I always disclose the relationship or tried to disclose the relationship before it was voted on. When you're dealing with Clark County and a budget the size of Clark County and the enterprise, 37 departments the size of Clark County, you're going to have situations where people that are bidding on contracts, bidding on services and whatnot, visit with you. I mean, my experience is that people that support elected officials do it because they're accessible. Now, I voted, like I say, against an awful lot of contracts that people didn't like that I voted against. And I've evaluated every single contract, every single issue on its own merits. And to imply otherwise is categorically untrue. And my opponent even said that she realized that, it doesn't impact the vote, but people throw it out there. They continue to throw it out there because it's easy fodder for those that want to, stir the pot, so to speak. But I've never let a campaign contribution impact the vote that I've made.
One of the issues was specifically a vote dealing with the development of homes in Red Rock. And supposedly the claim was that you helped friends in that vote. That's been an issue that has been around Southern Nevada and Las Vegas for a long time. It was again thrown against you. This is your opportunity. How do you respond?
I'm a big fan of Red Rock. I spent a lot of time at Red Rock. I was at Red Rock last weekend, in fact. It's just, that's another one that's just categorically untrue. When we're sitting at the county commission, we have an attorney that's sitting down and just a little lower than we are, a little on the level beyond us. And the Clark County District Attorney, is that position. And that was made clear that when you own property, you have a property right in order to develop. I can't say you can't build on a piece of property because the neighbors want it to stay a vacant lot. That's simply not acceptable. You have what's called a bundle of rights, individual sticks that are your property rights. That particular one developed, it was Gypsum Ridge. It was not in Red Rock Conservation Area. It was 3 miles away from Red Rock Conservation Area.
The gypsum plant.
The gypsum plant. I was on that land. I don't know if anybody else was on that land. That is the most ravaged, pillaged piece of property I think I've ever seen. There are more mine shafts and tunnels on that property. I don't know how you could ever develop it, frankly, without sealing all those, collapsing all those, which would be a monumental expense. I don't know. He's in my opinion, the Roads Corporation has the opportunity to develop if it pencils out and they can sell enough high-end homes. But I can tell you, he has to pay to bring electricity and power and water and sewer and all that up there. I don't know how you can do that when you're pumping it uphill and you're going a long way to get there. That being said, I'm a firm believer in property rights, and he has the opportunity to get a zone for that. Now, what his reasons for the zoning were, I don't know. If he was really going to develop it, if he was going to get the zoning and then try to trade it to the federal government, get more money out of it because he was going to trade it and he had that entitlement on there, I don't know if that's what his intention was, but to imply that it's in Red Rock was simply unfair. To imply that a campaign contribution, anything to do that, was unfair. We were advised by our counsel, Rob Warhol at the time, and I clearly asked the question if we could deny this, and he said if we were to deny it, he could not defend our position in court, which is basically saying you can play to the people and play to the camera that want you to deny it, but if you do that, it's going to cost everybody else in the county tens of millions of dollars as a result of what's called the taking for his property, and I would not subject the taxpayers and the citizens of Clark County to that type of a risk. And it did happen at the state level the first time he was denied. The state had to compensate him to the tune of several $million for their taking. So I think it was on advice of counsel. It was a decision that we had to make, but it was mischaracterized in the media.
The last question I have for you is the one that I kind of felt as though was thrown out there, and the real story behind it never came out. And that was that Steve Sisolak, running for governor, county commission chairman, now runs the government that he once sued and gained $23 million for. That was a situation that nobody explained.
Right.
This is your chance to explain.
And I appreciate it. And $23 million was, so everybody in a sense, was a total verdict, and a lot of that went to lawyer, a lot of it went to taxes, and I got a percentage of that. Not as large a percentage as would have been nice, but I got some of that. Excuse me. What happened in that situation? The government took my property, and after a court case, they had to compensate me for that property. Now, that was decided by a district court. It went to the Nevada Supreme Court. Nevada Supreme Court upheld the decision. It went to the United States Supreme Court, who decided not to take the case because it was a states' rights issue. So that was appealed as far as you could possibly get, and subsequent to my settlement, or my verdict, every other property owner that was affected got the same compensation. When the government takes property under the Constitution, they have to compensate somebody for the property that they take. And what they did is all the land that surrounded the airport, when they extended a runway, they made it impossible to build over a certain height, which instead of being able to build a 10-story building, you could build a 1-story building or a 2-story building, which devalued the property tremendously. And that's what we sued for, and we were compensated for the property that the government took. That's what it was.
What makes Steve Sisolak the better candidate for governor? What makes Steve Sisolak the individual that should take this state forward?
Well, that's a question that I thought long and hard about before I got into this race. And I've lived here now for 43 years. Lived in most of my adult life, all of my adult life, in fact. I've lived in Nevada and got my graduate degree from UNLV, which was nowhere near the size that it is today when I got my degree back then. Excuse me, I've got I'm a single dad. I raised 2 daughters who are the pride and joy of my life. I mean, my oldest is in the public defender's office. My youngest is on a road trip with the Golden Knights hockey team. She's a marketing manager for the Knights hockey team. I got the benefit. They graduated from Durango High School, and had great opportunities at Durango. And I've had great opportunities in Las Vegas. Had a small business and done investing here and done well for myself, and I'm able to support my family. And I've been blessed to that extent. And I was given advice by my dad before he passed that you try to leave it a little better than when you got there. And I think I want to leave our community better than when I got here and give other people the opportunity that I had. And I did have a tremendous amount of opportunities. I want other people to have the same opportunities. I want them to have the opportunity where they can send their kids to good school, where seniors can get health care, that they don't have to worry about Meals on Wheels being eliminated. And you and I have talked about some of these things where they don't know where the next meal is going to come from, where they don't have to cut a prescription in half for blood pressure medication because they can't afford 2 copays. Those are the issues that really are important to me. And we've got an environment here that I want to protect, whether it's Red Rock, whether it's Lake Tahoe, whatever it might be. Our environment is important to us, not just for you and I, but for the generations that are coming after us. And I'm afraid with some irresponsible policies that could be coming out of Washington and that my opponent agrees with is, I can't accept that. I simply can't accept that moving forward.
You talked earlier about being bipartisan. I've heard so many politicians pledge the same thing, but when push comes to shove, it ends up party line. How then is Steve Sisolak going to change that paradigm, and how can we as a state become better without it?
I think, we put way too much emphasis on the labels when you get to, progressive, conservative, Republican, Democrat, that sort of thing. I'm a Nevadan. That's what I am. And if you're interested in what's best for the citizens of the state of Nevada, I'm going to be on your side, and we're going to get along just fine. I've owned a business. I know what it's like to make a payroll. I know what it's like after serving on the county commission. We can deal with some of the most difficult issues in the world. I mean, it's the zoning for the convention center expansion we had a couple weeks ago. That was, really contentious in terms of how it should be turned and how it's going to affect everybody, and spend hours on that. And then the next item might be if you can raise your block wall 6 inches or 8 inches because the leaves are falling in the next door neighbor's pool and it's causing a problem with the pool skimmer. But to you, that's the biggest issue if you come before the commission with that. So I take every item seriously, every item on its own merits. I'm happy to meet with anybody on every side of every issue. And sometimes I'm a firm believer, and I can get people to yes. That's my goal, is to get everybody agree to yes on some type of a compromise. And I don't think compromise is a bad term anymore. In politics, a lot of people think it is. It's win at all costs, win at any cost, and win it all. I think compromising is a good thing because it's good for our community. And I believe that if we can sit in a room and we can be on opposite sides of an issue, you're going to say one, I'm going to say two, and I shut the door and lock the door and put on a pot of coffee. Before you leave, we're going to come to 1.5. And we're going to come up with something that we can both agree that that's fair and that you're getting something, I'm getting something, we're not getting everything, and we can smile at each other and shake hands and be friends. But when I get to neighbors that are complaining about branches leaning over a wall, and they tell me that they haven't spoken in 4 years because of these branches, I'm just like, I'm astounded that it goes that far. So we need to get people on the same page and come together more than we have.
Commissioner, thank you very much.
It's been a real honor.
It's been a great insight into the man running for governor, and we wish you the best. And I think that the state needs to find its direction, and we thank you for being here today.
I appreciate it. Thank you. You're right. We need to decide what kind of state we want to be and how we're going to get there, and that's what I intend to do.
Thank you, sir.
You're a good friend. Thank you.
We'll be right back with some final words in a moment. Stay with us. I think as Mr. Sisolak had mentioned, this is a very, very tough time for a lot of people. And I think it becomes even more important for people to look at the candidates and figure who those candidates are and what they represent. Hopefully today we gave you at least some insight and a look into what Steve Sisolak is all about, because the decisions people make when they go to the polling places are very, very important and could change what happens at any given time. Until the next time, I'm Steve Schorr. Be safe and enjoy life under the Vegas sun.